June 28th, 1941, 4:47 a.m. 16 kilometers east of Minsk, Belarusian SSR. Private Ivan Kuznetsov's hands are shaking. Not from fear, from hunger. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. The bread ration his company received last week was moldy, half the weight it should have been. The commissar told them to be grateful, that the motherland was feeding millions, that sacrifice was patriotic. Now, none of that matters. The German panzers came through the forest like metal thunder. Kuznetsov's entire regiment, over 4,000 men, was encircled in less than 6 hours. No orders, no retreat, just confusion, then silence. Soviet commanders either fled or were killed in the first artillery barrage. The men were left standing in the open fields, watching the dust clouds of German armor closing in from 3 sides. Kuznetsov drops his Mosin Nagant rifle into the mud. Around him, hundreds of other soldiers are doing the same. Some are crying. Others stand frozen, eyes vacant. A few try to run. Gunfire cracks in the distance. They don't get far. A German half-track rumbles to a stop 30 meters away. Soldiers in Feldgrau uniforms jump out, weapons raised, shouting commands in a language Kuznetsov doesn't understand. But the meaning is clear. Hands up. Move forward. Don't resist. He raises his hands. So do the others. This is it, he thinks. This is where we die. The stories had been drilled into them during political lectures. The fascists were monsters. They executed prisoners, tortured them, burned villages. Commissar Volkov showed them photographs, bodies in ditches, women and children shot in the streets. The message was clear. Surrender meant death. Fight to the last bullet. Fight to the last breath. But Kuznetsov has no bullets left, and he's too weak to fight. The German soldiers herd them into columns, thousands of Soviet POWs, stretching back along the dirt road as far as the eye can see. The sun is rising now, casting long shadows across the fields. Kuznetsov's legs are numb. His stomach is a knot of pain. He wonders if they'll shoot them here, or march them somewhere first. An older soldier next to him, a sergeant with a blood-soaked bandage around his head, leans close and whispers, "They'll kill us all, just like they said." Kuznetsov doesn't answer. He's too tired to be afraid anymore. But then something strange happens. A German officer, tall, late 30s, with a Wehrmacht captain's insignia, walks down the line, inspecting the prisoners. He's carrying a clipboard, taking notes. He stops in front of Kuznetsov, looks him up and down, then says something to a nearby corporal. The corporal nods and moves on. No shot, no beating, just observation. The column begins to move. They march west, away from the front. Kuznetsov expects a firing squad at the end of the road. Instead, after 2 kilometers, they arrive at a hastily constructed barbed wire enclosure. Hundreds of other Soviet prisoners are already inside. Guards stand at intervals, weapons ready, but no one is being executed. Not yet, anyway. Then, at 11:15 a.m., something happens that Ivan Kuznetsov will never forget. A German supply truck pulls up to the edge of the camp. Soldiers begin unloading wooden crates. One of them shouts an order, and the guards motion for the prisoners to form lines. Kuznetsov shuffles forward with the others, too exhausted to think. A German soldier, young, maybe 20, hands him something. It's a tin of meat, real meat, and a piece of black bread. Dense, heavy, not moldy. Kuznetsov stares at it. His hands are trembling again. The German says something in broken Russian. Essen, eat. Ivan looks around. Other prisoners are receiving the same. Some are already tearing into the food, weeping as they chew. Others just stand there, holding the tins like they're holding grenades, afraid they'll explode. Kuznetsov opens the tin. The smell hits him. Salted pork, rich and thick. His stomach lurches. He takes a bite. It's the best thing he's tasted in 6 months. And in that moment, standing in a German POW camp, surrounded by barbed wire and enemy soldiers, one thought cuts through his mind like a knife. The Nazis are feeding me better than my own army ever did. June 29th, 1941. Morning. The same enclosure, 16 kilometers east of Minsk. Ivan Kuznetsov wakes up on bare ground, his body stiff and aching. But for the first time in months, his stomach isn't screaming at him. The bread and meat from yesterday, German rations, actually filled him. He can still taste the salt on his lips. Around him, thousands of Soviet prisoners are stirring. Some are talking in low voices. Others sit in silence, staring at nothing. A few are praying, fingers tracing invisible crosses over their chests, something that would have earned them a visit from the NKVD back home. No one mentions it. At 7:30 a.m., the German guards return with more crates, another food distribution. This time, Kuznetsov is ready. He moves quickly to the front of the line, joining the crush of desperate men. The guards shout, push them back into order, but they don't strike anyone. They just distribute. Kuznetsov receives another tin. This one says Rindfleisch on the label, and a portion of boiled potatoes, still warm. He can't believe it. He sits down on the dirt and eats slowly, savoring every bite. The sergeant from yesterday, the one with the bandaged head, sits down beside him. His name is Dmitry Sokolov, 42 years old, a veteran of the Finnish War. He looks at his food like it's a puzzle he can't solve. "This doesn't make sense," Sokolov mutters. Kuznetsov glances at him. "What doesn't?" "This." Sokolov holds up the tin. "They're feeding us. Real food. 2 days in a row." "So?" "So they're supposed to kill us. That's what we were told. The fascists don't take prisoners. They execute them." Kuznetsov shrugs. Maybe the commissars were wrong. Sokolov's eyes narrow. He leans closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Or maybe our own people were lying. The words hang in the air like smoke. Dangerous words. The kind that could get you shot, if there were any commissars left to hear them. But there aren't. Kuznetsov looks around the camp. Thousands of Red Army soldiers, all thinking the same forbidden thought, all realizing the same unthinkable truth. They were lied to. By midday, rumors are spreading through the camp like wildfire. A prisoner from the 32nd Rifle Division claims the Germans are planning to send them to work camps in Poland. Another says they'll be used as laborers to rebuild bridges. A third, older, more cynical, insists this is temporary, that once the Germans finish processing them, the executions will begin. But the food keeps coming. At 2 p.m., German medics arrive. Actual medics, with Red Cross armbands. They move through the camp, treating wounds, distributing bandages, even giving out aspirin tablets. Kuznetsov watches as they clean and redress Sergeant Sokolov's head wound. The German medic works carefully, almost gently. He says something in German. Sokolov doesn't understand. But the tone is professional, clinical, not cruel. When the medic finishes, he pats Sokolov on the shoulder and moves on. Sokolov stares after him, speechless. "They're treating us like soldiers," he finally says, "not animals." Kuznetsov doesn't respond. He's too busy remembering the last meal he had in the Red Army. March 1941. A watery soup with a few potato peels floating in it. The quartermaster claimed it was full rations. When a private complained, the commissar had him arrested for defeatism. They never saw him again. Remembering the winter of 1940, during the Finnish campaign, Kuznetsov's unit went 4 days without food because the supply convoy got stuck in the snow. Officers ate first, then the NCOs. The enlisted men got whatever was left, which was nothing. 3 soldiers in his platoon died of exposure and starvation. before the offensive even began, remembering the propaganda posters in every barracks. The motherland provides. Be grateful for Soviet abundance. But there was no abundance. There was never enough. Not enough food, not enough boots, not enough ammunition. Just enough fear to keep everyone in line. And now, here, in a German prison camp, surrounded by the enemy, he's eating better than he ever did under Stalin. The thought makes him feel sick, not from the food, from the realization. June 30th, 1941, evening. A new group of prisoners arrives, about 800 men, fresh from another encircled unit. They stumble into the camp, wide-eyed and terrified, expecting death. Instead, they're given food. Kuznetsov watches their faces as they eat. The confusion, the disbelief, the shame. One of the new prisoners, a young lieutenant, barely 20, sits down near Kuznetsov's group. His uniform is torn, his face smudged with dirt. He's crying as he chews the bread. "They fed us," he whispers. "The fascists fed us." Sergeant Sokolov spits into the dirt. "Yeah, better than our own side ever did." The lieutenant looks up, horrified. "Don't say that. Don't ever say that." "Why not? It's true." "Because it's treason." Sokolov laughs, a bitter, hollow sound. "Treason? Look around, boy. We're already prisoners. There's no commissar here to shoot us for telling the truth." The lieutenant opens his mouth to argue, then closes it. He looks down at the bread in his hands. German bread. Enemy bread. The bread that's keeping him alive. He takes another bite. That night, Kuznetsov lies on the cold ground, staring up at the stars. Around him, thousands of Soviet prisoners are doing the same. Some are snoring. Others are whispering prayers. A few are crying softly, trying not to be heard. Kuznetsov isn't crying. He's thinking about what happens next. The Germans won't feed them forever. This generosity, if that's even what it is, has to be temporary. A strategy, maybe. Something to keep them compliant while the Wehrmacht reorganizes. Or maybe it's just basic human decency. The kind of decency he never experienced in the Red Army. He doesn't know which possibility scares him more. Because if the enemy treats you better than your own country, what does that make you? July 3rd, 1941, mid-morning. POW enclosure, Minsk region. The camp is growing. Every day new columns of Soviet prisoners shuffle through the gates, hundreds, sometimes thousands. The encirclement operations are working. Entire Red Army divisions are being swallowed whole by the German advance, and every man who arrives tells the same story. They expected execution. They got food instead. Kuznetsov has been here 6 days now. 6 days of German rations. His strength is returning. The hollowness in his cheeks is filling out. He can stand without his legs shaking. For the first time since the invasion began, he doesn't feel like he's dying. Others are noticing too. A corporal from the 44th Rifle Division, a man named Grigory Petrov, sits with Kuznetsov's group during the morning distribution. He's older, maybe 35, with a thick beard and sharp eyes. He watches the German guards carefully as they hand out tins of herring and dense rye bread. "You know what I realized?" Petrov says quietly. Sergeant Sokolov glances at him. "What?" "These rations they're giving us, they're standard Wehrmacht field rations, not prisoner food, not garbage. The same food their own soldiers eat." Kuznetsov frowns. "How do you know?" "I was a supply clerk before the war. I've seen requisition documents. I know what military rations look like." Petrov holds up his tin. "This is real food. Protein, fats, calories. Probably 2,500, maybe 3,000 calories a day." Sokolov snorts. "More than we ever got." "Exactly." Petrov leans forward, voice dropping. "In the Red Army, Enlisted rations were supposed to be 3,450 calories per day. That's what the official documents said. But we never got that. Ever. The officers skimmed off the top. The quartermasters sold it on the black market. What reached us was maybe half. Watery soup, stale bread, rotten potatoes. Kuznetsov nods slowly. He remembers. Everyone remembers. But here, Petrov continues, the Germans are actually feeding us, properly, like we're worth keeping alive. They are keeping us alive, says a younger soldier, a private named Alexei, no older than 19. For work details, we'll be slaves. Maybe, Petrov says, but at least we'll be fed slaves. The words hang heavy in the air. No one argues, because no one can deny the truth. Being a German prisoner is better than being a Soviet soldier. July 5th, 1941, afternoon. A German officer arrives at the camp, a Hauptmann, captain, in his early 40s. He's accompanied by a translator, a Ukrainian man in civilian clothes who speaks fluent Russian. The officer orders the prisoners to gather in formation. Thousands of men shuffle into rough lines, unsure what's coming. The captain speaks. The translator relays his words. You are prisoners of war of the German Wehrmacht. Under the Geneva Convention, you will be treated humanely. You will be fed. You will receive medical care. You will not be tortured or executed. Those who cooperate will be transferred to labor camps. Those who resist will be punished, but you will be treated fairly. Kuznetsov listens, skeptical. The Geneva Convention. He's heard of it, vaguely. Something about rules for war. But the Soviet Union never signed it. Stalin called it a bourgeois luxury. So technically, the Germans don't have to follow it for Soviet prisoners. But they are. Why? The captain continues. Germany does not make war on soldiers who surrender. We make war on Bolshevism, on Stalin's regime, on the commissars who forced you to fight. But you, simple soldiers, you are not our enemies. You are victims of communism, just as we are fighting against it. The translator's voice is calm, almost sympathetic. Some prisoners shift uncomfortably. Others nod, as if they agree. Kuznetsov feels a chill run down his spine, because part of him, a small, traitorous part, does agree. That evening, Sergeant Sokolov gathers a small group of men near the western fence. Kuznetsov is among them. So is Petrov, the supply clerk, and Alexei, the young private. About a dozen in total. Sokolov speaks quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to say something, and if anyone here is going to report me to a commissar, assuming we ever see one again, you should leave now. No one moves. Sokolov takes a breath. I've been in the Red Army for 14 years. I fought in the Polish campaign. I fought in Finland. I've seen how we treat our own soldiers, and I've seen how the Germans are treating us. He pauses, and I'm going to say it. We were lied to, about everything. Alexei looks nervous. Comrade Sergeant, that's... I'm not your comrade anymore, boy. That word means nothing here. Sokolov's voice is sharp. We were told the Germans were monsters, that they killed prisoners, that they raped and burned and destroyed. And maybe they do, somewhere. But here, now, they're feeding us better than Stalin ever did. Petrov nods. He's right. I've been keeping track. We're getting more food here, in 6 days as prisoners, than we got in 6 months in the Red Army. Another soldier, a Ukrainian named Taras, speaks up. My village was collectivized in 32. The NKVD took everything. My family starved. My sister died. I was 10 years old. His voice cracks. The Soviets killed more of us than the Germans ever will. Murmurs of agreement ripple through the group. Kuznetsov feels his chest tighten. These are dangerous thoughts, forbidden thoughts. The kind of thoughts that get you sent to the gulag. But the gulag is 1,000 kilometers away, and the NKVD isn't here. So what do we do? Alexei asks quietly. Sokolov looks at him. We survive. We eat their food. We do what they tell us, and we don't feel guilty about it, because guilt is a luxury, and we've already paid enough. July 8th, 1941, morning. The food distribution continues. Kuznetsov has gained weight. His face has color again. He feels human. But something else is changing too. Something invisible. Something inside. He watches the German guards, young men not much older than him. They laugh. They smoke cigarettes. They share jokes. They look normal. Not like monsters. Not like devils. Just men. And that realization is more disturbing than anything else. Because if the enemy is human, if the enemy feeds you, treats your wounds, lets you live, then who is the real monster? Kuznetsov doesn't want to answer that question. But every day the answer becomes clearer, and every day it becomes harder to ignore. July 14th, 1941. Early afternoon. POW enclosure, Minsk region. The camp now holds over 18,000 men. The barbed wire perimeter has been expanded twice. German efficiency is on full display. Guard towers erected in days, supply lines running smoothly, medical stations operational. It's a machine, and the prisoners are processed like parts. But the food is still coming. Kuznetsov stands in line for the midday distribution, his tin cup in hand. The routine is familiar now, predictable, almost comfortable. The word makes him uncomfortable in itself. He shouldn't feel comfortable in a prison camp. But compared to the chaos and starvation of the front lines, this is almost peaceful. Almost. A new group of prisoners arrived this morning. About 600 men from a unit that held out near Vitebsk for 2 weeks. They're in worse shape than most. Skeletal. Faces like skulls. Some can barely walk. Kuznetsov watches as German medics rush to them immediately, triaging the worst cases, setting up IV drips for the ones too weak to eat solid food. One prisoner, a captain, identified by the remnants of his insignia, is carried on a stretcher. His eyes are sunken, his breathing shallow. A German doctor kneels beside him, checking his pulse, barking orders to his assistants. The captain is dying. Everyone can see it. But the Germans are trying to save him anyway. Why? Kuznetsov receives his ration, canned pork, a boiled potato, a piece of dark bread, and walks back to his usual spot. Sergeant Sokolov is already there, eating slowly. Petrov sits nearby, scratching notes into the dirt with a stick. He's been keeping a journal of sorts, tracking food quantities, prisoner numbers, German behavior. They brought in a labor detail yesterday, Petrov says without looking up. 300 men. Sent them to repair a bombed bridge near Borisov. Sokolov grunts. And? And they came back. All of them. Fed, rested, no one beaten or shot. Work details, Sokolov says. Just like the Hauptmann said. They need laborers. It's more than that. Petrov finally looks up. I talked to one of the men. He said the German engineers worked alongside them, showed them how to do the work properly, even shared cigarettes during breaks. He pauses. He said it felt like being part of a unit again, not like a slave. Kuznetsov frowns. They're trying to win us over. Maybe, Petrov says, or maybe they just need us functional. A starving prisoner can't work. A dead prisoner is useless. So they feed us. It's practical. It's still better than what we had, Sokolov mutters. No one disagrees. July 16th, 1941. Evening. A rumor spreads through the camp like electricity. The Germans are forming volunteer units. Soviet prisoners who are willing to fight against the Red Army can join auxiliary forces, Hilfswillige, or Hiwis, as the Germans call them. They'll receive full rations, proper uniforms, even pay. Kuznetsov hears the rumor from Alexei, who heard it from a Ukrainian prisoner, who heard it from a guard. Third-hand information, probably exaggerated. But 2 hours later, a German officer and the Ukrainian translator stand at the center of the camp and confirm it. The Wehrmacht is offering an opportunity, the translator announces. Those who wish to fight against Bolshevism, against Stalin's tyranny, may volunteer for auxiliary service. You will not fight on the front lines. You will serve in support roles, supply transport, road construction, administrative duties. You will be treated as members of the Wehrmacht. You will be fed, clothed, and paid. A stunned silence falls over the camp. Then, slowly, hands begin to rise. Not many, maybe 30, maybe 40, out of 18,000 men. But still, they're volunteering to fight for the enemy. Kuznetsov watches, frozen. He doesn't raise his hand. Neither does Sokolov, or Petrov, or most of the men around him. But some do, and Kuznetsov understands why. Because what is the alternative? Sit in this camp and wait? Wait for what? For the Red Army to counterattack and liberate them? The Red Army is collapsing. Everyone knows it. The front is moving east every day, hundreds of kilometers deep into Soviet territory. The chance of rescue is zero. So what's left? Starvation, dysentery, slow death in a prison camp. Or, take the German offer. Eat real food. Wear a clean uniform. Survive. It's not loyalty. It's not ideology. It's just survival. July 18th, 1941. Night. Kuznetsov lies awake, staring at the stars. Around him, thousands of men are sleeping, or trying to. The night air is cool. Mosquitoes buzz in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rumbles like distant thunder. He thinks about his family. His mother back in Kursk. His younger brother Mikhail, who wanted to join the Red Army but was too young. Are they safe? Are they even alive? He has no way of knowing. He thinks about his unit, the men he served with. Most of them are dead now, blown apart in the first week of the invasion. He survived by luck, or maybe by cowardice. He dropped his rifle and surrendered instead of fighting to the death like the commissars demanded. Is that cowardice? Or is that intelligence? He doesn't know anymore. A voice breaks the silence. Petrov, sitting nearby, staring into the darkness. I've been doing the math, Petrov says quietly. What math? Kuznetsov asks. Calories, nutrition, survival rates. Petrov's voice is clinical, detached. In the Red Army, we were malnourished, chronically. The average Soviet soldier was operating at maybe 60% physical capacity because of inadequate food. We were weaker, slower, less able to fight. So the Germans are feeding us better than our own army did, which means, Petrov pauses, which means Stalin was willing to let his own soldiers starve. Not because there wasn't enough food, there was. The Soviet Union is one of the largest grain producers in the world, but because the system was corrupt, because the officers stole, because the commissars prioritized ideology over logistics. Kuznetsov doesn't respond. He doesn't need to. Petrov continues. And now we're prisoners, enemy prisoners, and we're eating better. We're healthier. We're being kept alive. His voice drops to a whisper. What does that say about the system we were fighting for? Kuznetsov closes his eyes. He doesn't want to think about it, but he can't stop. July 20th, 1941. Morning. The Germans make an announcement. Due to overcrowding, 5,000 prisoners will be transferred to a larger camp in Poland. The move will begin tomorrow. Those selected will be notified. Panic ripples through the camp. Men whisper frantically. Is this the end? Are they being taken to execution sites? Mass graves? But then the rations come again. Same as always. Meat, bread, potatoes. If they were planning to kill everyone, why keep feeding them? Kuznetsov is selected for transfer. So is Sokolov. So is Petrov. They pack nothing. They have nothing to pack. Just the clothes on their backs. The guards line them up at dawn, load them onto trucks. The ride is long, bumpy, uncomfortable, but no one is beaten. No one is shot. They arrive at a new camp, larger, more organized. Wooden barracks instead of open ground. Latrines, a medical tent, even a small kitchen. And that night, they receive the same rations. Kuznetsov eats his meal slowly. He tastes every bite, and he realizes something he can never unrealize. The enemy is treating him like a human being. His own country never did. August 2nd, 1941, morning. POW camp outside Białystok, Poland. The new camp holds 40,000 men, maybe more. Kuznetsov has lost count. The wooden barracks are cramped, 200 men per building designed for 80. But at least there's a roof, at least there's shelter, and the food still comes. Every morning, every afternoon, bread, canned meat, sometimes soup. Not generous portions, but consistent, reliable. More than Kuznetsov ever saw in the Red Army. But something is changing. He notices it first in the guards. The young wehrmacht soldiers who used to joke and smoke cigarettes near the fence. They're being rotated out. Replaced. The new guards are different, older, harder. They wear the same uniforms, but their eyes are cold. They don't speak to prisoners. They don't share cigarettes. They just watch. And behind them, new units are arriving. Not Wehrmacht, something else. Kuznetsov sees them from a distance. Men in field gray uniforms with different insignia. SS runes on their collars. Death's head emblems. They set up a separate command post outside the main camp. They bring trucks, dogs, lists. Sergeant Sokolov sees them too. His face goes pale. This is it, he mutters. This is when it changes. What do you mean? Alexei asks, nervous. I mean the mercy is over. August 4th, 1941. Mid-morning. An announcement crackles through loudspeakers mounted on poles throughout the camp. All prisoners will assemble for registration. This is mandatory. Any prisoner who refuses will be shot. The voice is German, then repeated in Russian by a translator. Not the same Ukrainian translator from before. This one's voice is flat, bureaucratic. The prisoners are herded into the central yard. Tens of thousands of men, pressed shoulder to shoulder. German soldiers and SS officers move through the crowd with clipboards, asking questions, taking notes. When they reach Kuznetsov, an SS sergeant asks in broken Russian, "Political officer?" "No," Kuznetsov says quickly. "Private, infantry." "Commissar?" "No." "NKVD?" "No, just infantry." The sergeant makes a mark on his clipboard and moves on. But others aren't so lucky. 2 men down the line, both lieutenants, are pulled aside. An SS officer barks questions at them. One admits he was a political officer. The other denies it, but someone in the crowd shouts that he's lying. Both men are dragged away. Kuznetsov watches them go. They're taken toward the back of the camp, where the SS trucks are parked. He never sees them again. August 6th, 1941, afternoon. The selections continue. Every day, more prisoners are pulled from the barracks. Commissars, political officers, Jews, anyone the SS considers dangerous or undesirable. At first, the rumors say they're being sent to separate camps, special facilities. But no one believes that anymore, because the trucks that leave never come back empty. They return hours later, sometimes with bloodstains on the canvas, and the guards who accompany them come back silent, drinking heavily, refusing to talk. Petrov hears it from a Polish laborer who works near the camp. There's a forest 5 kilometers away. The SS takes prisoners there in groups of 50. They dig pits. Then they're shot. Mass graves. Thousands of them. Kuznetsov feels his stomach turn. This is what they were warned about. This is what the commissar said would happen. Executions. Atrocities. They were right. But they were also wrong. Because it's not random. It's not everyone. The SS isn't killing ordinary soldiers, just the politicals, the ideologues, the enforcers of Stalin's system, the ones who kept soldiers like Kuznetsov in line through fear. And now, in a grotesque inversion, they're the ones being eliminated. August 9th, 1941, evening. A prisoner named Ilya, a former schoolteacher from Smolensk, is dragged from the barracks by 2 SS guards. He's screaming, clawing at the dirt, begging. "I'm not a commissar, I swear. I'm just a schoolteacher. Please." No one helps him. No one dares. The guards haul him away. His screams fade into the distance. Sokolov spits into the dirt. "He was a party member," he says quietly. "Someone must have told them." "Who?" Kuznetsov asks. Sokolov looks at him. "Does it matter? There are 40,000 men in this camp. Half of them hate the party. The other half are terrified of being accused. People talk. People give names. That's how it works." Kuznetsov feels sick. He remembers the NKVD, the purges, the denunciations, neighbor turning on neighbor, friend betraying friend. The Soviets perfected that system. Now the prisoners are using it against each other. August 12th, 1941, night. The rations are shrinking. Not dramatically. Not yet. But Kuznetsov notices. The bread is a little smaller. The soup is a little thinner. The canned meat comes every other day now, instead of daily. Petrov notices too. They're consolidating resources, he says grimly. The wehrmacht is stretched thin. The front is moving faster than supply lines. They're prioritizing their own troops. "So we starve," Alexei says, his voice hollow. "Eventually, yes." Sokolov shakes his head. "We had a good run. 6 weeks of decent food. That's more than most Soviet soldiers get in a year." Kuznetsov doesn't laugh. Because it's true. And because he knows what comes next. The mercy was temporary. A logistical convenience. A way to keep prisoners compliant during the initial chaos of invasion. But now the invasion is slowing. The Germans are bogged down. And 40,000 Soviet prisoners are a burden. A burden that costs food, resources, guards. A burden that's about to be reduced. August 15th, 1941. Morning. The loudspeakers crackle to life. All prisoners fit for labor will be transferred to work details. All prisoners unfit for labor will remain in camp for medical evaluation. Kuznetsov's blood runs cold. Medical evaluation. That's what they're calling it. Sokolov grabs his arm. "If they ask if you can work, you say yes. You understand? No matter how tired you are, no matter how sick you feel, you say yes." "What happens if I say no?" Sokolov's face is grim. "You stay here, and you don't leave." Kuznetsov understands. Medical evaluation. Another name for selection. Another name for death. August 16th, 1941. Dawn. The Germans divide the camp. Those selected for labor are loaded onto trains, cattle cars, packed tight, barely room to breathe. Kuznetsov, Sokolov, and Petrov are among them. So is Alexei. They're the lucky ones. As the train pulls away, Kuznetsov looks back through the slats of the cattle car. He sees the men left behind. Thousands of them, too sick, too weak, too unfit, standing in the yard, surrounded by SS guards, waiting. The train picks up speed. The camp disappears behind them. Kuznetsov closes his eyes. He survived. Again. But the cost of survival is knowing what happens to those who don't. August 22nd, 1941. Afternoon. Labor camp, outside Krakow, occupied Poland. The cattle car journey took 4 days. No food, no water. Men urinated where they stood. Some collapsed and couldn't get up. By the time the train stopped, 17 men in Kuznetsov's car were dead, trampled, suffocated, or simply given up. The Germans dragged the bodies out and burned them in a pit. The survivors were marched to a new camp, smaller, grimmer. No wooden barracks here, just canvas tents and mud. The wire fences are topped with machine gun nests. Guard dogs patrol the perimeter. This isn't a holding facility anymore. This is a labor camp. The rations are cut again. 1 meal a day now. Watery soup with bits of turnip. A crust of bread. Maybe 800 calories. Barely enough to survive. Definitely not enough to work. But they work anyway. 12 hours a day. Building roads, hauling stones, digging trenches. The guards don't ask. They order. And if you're too slow, if you collapse, if you refuse, you're replaced. Kuznetsov learns quickly. Keep your head down. Conserve energy. Don't complain. Sokolov teaches him tricks, how to look busy while resting, how to hide when guards aren't watching, how to steal extra seconds of rest without getting caught. Survival becomes a science. But it's a losing game, because every day more men die. Exhaustion, disease, beatings. The bodies are carried out at dawn and thrown into mass graves behind the camp. No ceremony, no prayers, just disposal. Kuznetsov wonders how long before it's his turn. September 3rd, 1941, evening. Petrov is sick. Dysentery, probably. He's lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. His face is skeletal, his hands trembling. He can barely stand. But he still works, because if he stops, he dies. During a brief rest, he leans against a pile of stones and whispers to Kuznetsov. "Do you remember what I said about the Germans feeding us?" Kuznetsov nods. "I was wrong." Petrov's voice is faint, raspy. They weren't being generous. They were just efficient. Feed prisoners enough to keep them functional, then work them to death. It's cheaper than bullets. Kuznetsov doesn't respond. There's nothing to say. Petrov coughs, wet, painful. Blood flecks his lips. "We traded one monster for another. That's all." "Maybe," Kuznetsov says quietly. "But at least we had 6 weeks of food. That's more than we ever got from Stalin." Petrov laughs, a bitter, broken sound. "Yeah, 6 weeks. What a gift." He dies 3 days later. They bury him in the mass grave with 47 others. September 10th, 1941, morning. Alexei is gone. Kuznetsov doesn't know how. One day he was there, working beside him, and the next morning he just wasn't. Maybe he collapsed during the night. Maybe he was taken by the guards. Maybe he tried to escape. It doesn't matter. He's gone. Kuznetsov feels nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just emptiness. He's learned not to feel. Feeling is a luxury. Feeling costs energy, and energy is survival. Sokolov is still alive, barely. He's tougher than most. Years of military life hardened him. But even he is fading. His face is gaunt, his movements slow. He doesn't talk much anymore. One night, lying on the frozen ground under a thin blanket, Sokolov whispers, "Do you think anyone will remember this?" "Remember what?" Kuznetsov asks. "This. Us. What happened?" Sokolov stares at the stars. "The Soviets won't. They'll call us traitors for surrendering. The Germans won't. We're just numbers to them. So who's left?" Kuznetsov doesn't answer. Because Sokolov is right. No one will remember. They're ghosts, erased from history before they're even dead. September 18th, 1941. Afternoon. A German officer, a different one, younger, with a wehrmacht uniform instead of SS, arrives at the camp. He inspects the work details, takes notes, shakes his head. Then he orders the guards to increase rations. Not much, just a little. An extra piece of bread, a thicker soup. It's not kindness, it's pragmatism. Too many workers are dying. The labor output is dropping. Dead prisoners can't build roads. But Kuznetsov doesn't care why. He eats the extra bread. He drinks the thicker soup. And for the first time in weeks, he feels a flicker of something he thought was gone. Hope. Not hope for freedom. Not hope for rescue. Just hope that he'll survive one more day. October 1st, 1941. Evening. The first snow falls. Winter is coming. And everyone knows what that means. Kuznetsov has no winter coat, no boots, just the same torn uniform he was captured in, now hanging off his skeletal frame. Sokolov looks at him and says what they're both thinking. "We won't survive the winter." Kuznetsov nods. "I know. So what do we do?" "We survive today, and tomorrow, and the day after, until we can't." Sokolov smiles, grim, exhausted. "That's all we've ever done." October 15th, 1941. Night. Kuznetsov lies on the frozen ground, shivering, staring at the sky. He thinks about the 6 weeks. The 6 weeks when the Germans fed him, when he was treated like a human being, when he was stronger, healthier, more alive than he'd been in the entire Red Army. He thinks about the men who volunteered to fight for the Germans, the Hiwis. Were they traitors? Or were they just survivors, doing what they had to do? He doesn't know. He thinks about Stalin, about the commissars, about the system that starved its own soldiers, shot its own officers, and called it patriotism. He thinks about the Germans, about the brief mercy, then the brutal efficiency, about the executions, the labor camps, the mass graves. 2 monsters. One wore a red star, one wore a swastika. And Ivan Kuznetsov was crushed between them. He closes his eyes. He doesn't know if he'll wake up tomorrow, but if he does, he'll do what he's always done. Survive. One more day.